On October 22, 2018, Mitch Flower Power achieved a new world record by completing Super Mario Bros. 3 in 10 minutes and 44.416 seconds.
Yeah!
When watching the run, some things might seem odd or even suspicious. Why does he wait here? Why does he slow down? How does he jump on a wall? What makes this speedrun so good? Let's answer all of those questions and more. This is the Super Mario Bros. 3 World Record Speedrun Explained. First of all, the category. This is any % no wrong warp. The any % part means that the goal is to finish the game by reaching this screen no matter how much of the game was actually completed. The use of warp whistles is allowed, so the goal will be to get 2 warp whistles, then to use them both to warp to World 8, and then to beat World 8 as quickly as possible. For speedruns that complete more of the game, there's warpless and 100%. If you want to check out these runs, you can find a link in the video description. The no wrong warp part is a bit more complex to explain. In short, there's a glitch that, under certain circumstances, can force the game to read the value of variables in memory as if it was instructions of game code. With an extremely precise setup, there's a way to set values for those variables that translate into instructions that tell the game to skip to the end screen immediately. This is a wrong warp, and that specific instance is called a credits warp. It's a fascinating, albeit very different speedrun, and will be covered in a separate video. As you may have noticed, Mitch slowed down here, but then Mario was moving much faster. There's a crucial mechanic in Mario Bros. 3 called P-Speed. The meter at the bottom of the screen fills up when Mario is running. When it's full, Mario will run faster, jump higher, and if he has the Super Leaf or the Tanuki suit, be able to fly. The meter only fills up when B is held and Mario is running on the ground at top speed. Mitch wants to fill up the P meter as early as possible to make use of that faster movement speed. He barely doesn't have enough space to fill it all the way up while jumping over the Goomba, so as soon as he reaches P speed, he jumps and does a quick left tap to dodge the Piranha Plant. Doing it this way is still faster than jumping earlier and filling up the meter later. Bouncing on these enemies is simply done by jumping right before touching them in the last 3 frames before getting hit.
I play too hard.
Here, the Hammer Brother moves before Mario can start moving. This happens every time when going back to the world map, while at least one Hammer Brother is there. Each Hammer Brother chooses one direction to go in. Then, it checks if the spot under it is free. Hammer Brothers can't stay on a stage, a mushroom house, or another Hammer Brother. In that case, they keep moving, only going back the way they came from if they're in a dead end. Interestingly, Hammer Brothers cannot choose to go towards a spade game, a pipe, or a completed level, and if they move to a matching card game, both the Hammer Brother and the matching card game will move to try to find a free spot. This can lead to situations where a Hammer Brother is trapped, or where 2 Hammer Brothers waltz together for a very long time, or even worse, where a Hammer Brother and a matching game are stuck together forever, soft-locking the game. World 1 will be loaded a total of 4 times, once after each of these 4 stages. So the Hammer Brother has 29 different possibilities to move between 4 and 8 tiles of total movement. Every time it moves by more than a single tile, the additional movement costs a bit over half a second. Because of the mechanics behind the choice of a direction to go in, the possibilities are not equiprobable. The optimal pattern only has a 3.5% chance of happening. The likeliest scenario is that it moves 7 squares in total, and the expected average is a little over 6 squares. In this run, the Hammer Brother moved by 2, 1, 2, and 1 for a total of 6 squares, which is a little bit better than average. There's only a 22% chance of getting a better pattern than this. There are many more random elements in this run, and the chance of all of them being perfect is astronomically low. Not getting the optimal Hammer Brother pattern is not a big deal. In this level, P-Speed can only be acquired a bit later. It's theoretically possible to fill up the P-meter from the beginning, but that requires extremely precise inputs that are too hard to execute in real time. The fastest strategy to beat the level, as demonstrated by the tool-assisted speedrun for this game, is even crazier. Instead, Mitch goes for a strategy that is much easier at the cost of a fraction of a second.
Somebody tripped over the cable and unplugged the server. Damn right they did. Yo, Angel Wind, what's up?
Mitch will need a super leaf to fly up to the second warp whistle, so he needs a mushroom first. The fastest to get is here, because bumping on this block from the side allows him to grab the mushroom faster and keep more momentum than he would have kept from a regular block. Many of you may already know this, but after holding down on white blocks for 4 seconds, Mario falls behind the background, which allows him to get behind the black wall at the end of the stage. Hidden behind it is the secret exit that rewards him with the first warp whistle. By timing it correctly, Mitch was able to start moving and build up as much speed as possible right before the 4-second threshold. Holding this Koopa shell also let him run through this Koopa, letting him reach B speed without losing his mushroom or having to jump.
I thought you were saving bits for a loot crate. Yeah, don't be spending your bits. You gotta save them.
Moving on the overworld map is not as simple as it seems. The first movement after loading the map can be buffered by holding the desired direction. For every subsequent movement, attempting to move too early results in Mario being unable to move for the next 24 frames, which at this level of play is a major mistake. Additionally, when moving by multiple spaces in any given direction, holding the D-pad makes Mario move every 16 frames, but only after having to wait for those 24 frames first. So, to move around optimally, Mitch actually needs to time his D-pad presses perfectly. In this run, he will need to move on the overworld map 38 times, so it adds up very quickly. This is the second of the 2 whistles needed to reach World 8. Whenever Mario jumps with B-speed, a counter runs for a little over 4 seconds. If it reaches 0 before Mario lands and regains B-speed, the P-meter will reset, preventing Mario from flying any further. The counter always starts when Mario jumps, no matter his power-up state, so this is why he can fly up even though he didn't have the leaf at the moment he jumped. As long as this jump timer is active, Mario's speed is not taken into account, so Mario can turn around without resetting the P-meter. This also means that it's possible to reset the P-meter by repeatedly bouncing until the timer hits 0, even without the super leaf.
I read that part, Burns, yeah. That sucks.
Using a whistle will take you to the warp zone. Depending on which world it was used in, Mario will be placed in the next row unless he was already in World 8. But you can use a second whistle when already in the warp zone to go directly to the last row. This is the fastest way to reach the final world from the start of the game.
The Band-Aid. The Band-Aid strat.
This is the first of 4 auto-scrolling levels in World 8. Unfortunately, there's no way to speed up these levels significantly, so all Mitch has to do is to avoid losing time. The main thing to look out for in this level is lag, which can easily happen when too many enemies are on screen at once. So he tries to clear out enemies and prevent bombs from exploding.
The stories were too embarrassing. Twitch chat was like, shut it down! Shut the MFP chat down! I'm guaranteed one of the hands, most likely.
There is one way to reach the pipe faster, and that is by clipping inside of a block and letting the wall push Mario to the right and partly off screen, as you can see in this comparison with the tool-assisted speedrun. However, this is way too difficult to achieve and involves a high risk for a low reward. If Mario gets pushed off screen, he will be crushed and die. He can only get pushed a maximum of 22 pixels forward. Given that auto-scrollers move by 1 pixel every 2 frames, this trick can only save a maximum of 44 frames if done perfectly, which is not even 3/4 of a second. This part is where reducing lag is the most important. Getting rid of these bombs is crucial to avoid a slowdown and time loss.
Why are we doing pickup lines? I didn't know we were on to pickup lines. I'm not a pickup line person. I don't know if I've ever used a pickup line on someone before.
In this room, there are two key details to note. First, the chest only spawns when all enemies are dead and their projectiles are off-screen. The boomerang row can move forwards or backwards. If it moves forwards, it will throw its boomerang from further left, so the boomerang will take an extra 22 frames to go off-screen, delaying the chest by the same amount. Fortunately, it went backwards in this run. However, the boomerang row can also choose to delay its throw by 15 frames, which is what happened here. So, of the 4 different possibilities, Mitch got the second best outcome. Here's the second detail. When the chest spawns, it will be placed at one of these 2 points. It always appears at the furthest of the 2, so to reach the chest faster, Mitch made sure to keep Mario in the right half of the room while building up speed to the left, crossing the middle point right as the chest spawned.
I've never really done pickup lines before. I've always found them to be super, like, too much. Whether they work or not, that's not up for me to decide. I don't really care, or like, has nothing to do with me. I just always thought that me doing them was like weird. I don't know, I'm just not a pickup line kind of person.
This fire flower is one of the toughest power-ups to grab and keep in a 2D Mario game, even though Mitch makes it look easy. He needs to grab it for the upcoming battle against Boom Boom because using fireballs is faster than stomping on them 3 times. In fact, Mitch needs to keep this fire flower through the entirety of World 8. The remaining auto-scrollers in the run have very little going on, so they're going to be fast-forwarded through. If you'd like to watch them in full, the unedited speedrun is in the video description. When coming out of the pipe, Mario can't move to the right until he touches the floor. Mitch uses this to his advantage by letting go of the D-pad with his left hand so he can mash the B button with both hands. This lets him throw 2 fireballs, the maximum that can be on screen at once, as quickly as possible. When fireballs hit a target, they go out in a puff of smoke. Only when that puff of smoke has completely disappeared can a new fireball be thrown. However, if we look closely, you can see that he actually threw the 3rd fireball 11 frames after the first one fully disappeared. This is actually on purpose. Boom Boom can sometimes jump over fireballs, causing them to miss. So Mitch intentionally delays his fireballs by about 1/5 of a second to make sure that never happens. After that, he throws the final fireball only a couple of frames after the 3rd one fully disappears. You can tell how fast the Boom Boom fight was visually by looking at where he is compared to the floor texture. An optimal fight ends with Boom Boom centered on this line. As you can see, Mitch barely lost any time to an optimal fight. The tool-assisted run can actually kill Boom Boom even faster, but humans simply can't attain that level of perfection.
Yo, I did it without bumping. I finally did it. How do I press B so fast? I used both my thumbs.
How did Mario go over these squares without being grabbed once? Well, the short answer is luck. When Mario goes over each one of these 3 squares, he has a 50-50 chance of being grabbed by a hand and forced into the stage. Each of them is a pretty large time loss, so to have a chance at the record, Mitch needs to be lucky enough to avoid being grabbed all 3 times. This results in a 1 in 8 chance. This is by far the most important element of luck in the run. Other factors can cost small amounts of time here and there, but these hands cause 7 runs out of 8 to come to a dead end right there. This Boom Boom fight also went very well for Mitch. He executed this strategy pretty much perfectly.
To earn. I'm surprised I got no bump. Bumpless.
Here, Mitch intentionally slows down and waits before jumping to kill this piranha plant. This is because piranha plants take aim for a short time, then fire either up or down depending on where Mario is relative to them. If Mitch had jumped earlier, the plant would have fired up and hit Mario. So he made sure to wait until the plant fired its fireball down before he jumped, and he kept his precious fire flower. There's a special property of the P-meter that I haven't explained yet, and it's especially relevant here. The P-meter builds up only if Mario is running at full speed on the ground and B is held, but it doesn't check for these conditions at all times. It only checks once every 8 frames. Here, Mitch needs to throw a fireball to kill the Paratroopa, which means he needs to release B. If he's not holding B when the P-meter checks for the conditions, or if he lets his speed drop, the P-meter won't increment. Instead, it will decrement by 1 arrow and reset its timer to 24 frames, effectively delaying P-speed by 32 frames. There simply isn't enough room to get P-speed if that happens. So Mitch needs to release B when the P-meter is not checking for it and repress it fast enough to not lose any speed. According to his input display, he released it for only 2 frames. Here, Mitch slowed down intentionally. Mario gets a card at the end of every numbered stage. The card always cycles between a mushroom, a flower, and a star. Usually, running at P speed and jumping into the card will give Mario a star. This is what happened in the first 2 levels. Matching 3 stars gives you 5 lives with this long fanfare, so he wants to avoid it and get the much shorter single 1-up instead. So he delays his jump just enough for the card to cycle back to the mushroom.
Mario has momentum in this game, so I can hold the D-pad, let go, quick, shoot, and go back to the D-pad without much of a difference being made. Oh, God damn it, what a surprise. I can't believe I kept P-speed. But both times, both no hands runs got the bad RNG.
Here, you can see Mitch slowed down considerably and was visibly annoyed. What happened? He had to slow down because of the angry sun. Optimally, this section would look like this. However, the sun affects how you need to approach this part. The sun swoops down after spinning in the corner a random amount between 2 and 5 times. If it spins 3 times or more, there's enough time to bounce through this section near seamlessly, but if it spins only twice, there is no way to get past it without slowing down. It did spin twice here, so it would have hit Mario had he followed this route. This forced Mitch to slow down, unfortunately losing about half a second in the process. This is possibly the biggest time loss in the entire speedrun, which speaks volumes about the quality of the run itself. Again though, considering the 1 in 8 chance that Mitch just overcame, this is not the end of the world.
Nice slide.
This room is very tricky to get through this quickly without getting hit, especially this jump to avoid the rotodisc, which has a 2-frame window. Mitch's capture card missed the frame where Mario is on the ground, but you can see that Mario is still in midair on this frame, and 2 frames later, he already jumped again. The layout of this room makes reaching P-speed extremely tricky. Mitch intentionally stays on this backwards conveyor belt to maximize the time spent running at full speed. The small time loss from the backwards momentum of the conveyor is largely outweighed by the benefit of reaching P-speed before leaving this platform. Similarly, because he has to jump between these 2 platforms anyway, he stays on this forwards moving conveyor as little as possible. This 1 tile gap is crucial. If the P-meter happens to check for the 3 conditions while Mario is above the gap, Mario won't be on the ground, so the meter will not increment. So the 3 or 4 frames where Mario is over the gap need to fall in between 2 of these checks. It's hard to tell precisely when the check is made because the P-meter doesn't always visually update at the same time, but it possibly incremented exactly on the frame where Mario landed on the ground. Here, Mario somehow kept P-speed through the door. How is that possible? Normally, because Mario is stationary coming out of the door, the P-meter is reset. However, by jumping shortly after exiting the door, Mario will jump before the P-meter resets. Because Mario is now in the air, the P-meter is relying on the jump timer instead of Mario's speed, so it doesn't reset. Once he lands, he does briefly lose P-speed, but since he's already going almost at full speed, it doesn't take long for him to get it right back. This door is only there while the P-switch is active. Thanks to P-speed conservation, Mitch is able to make it in using the far P-switch. Otherwise, he would have had to hit this one instead. P-switches also stop conveyor belts, so if he had hit the close switch, he would have had to wait out its timer before being carried under the spikes. In the final moments of the P-switch, because the conveyor is stopped anyway, Mitch takes some time to build up momentum to slide as far as possible under the spikes. Jumping here lets Mario accelerate to a higher speed, which translates to an increased sliding distance that outweighs the benefits of the conveyor's momentum. Optimally, this would be the best strategy. However, in this run it would have been a few frames faster to simply go to the right. It all depends on exactly how long is left on the P-switch timer.
Right on. Now remember, the world record presses A on Bowser's Castle at 9:52. Remember, 9:52 on the A press in Bowser's Castle is the world record.
If you look closely, you can see that Boom Boom is a little off to the left, which means Mitch lost some time on this fight. His fireball timing was again top notch, but he lost time here because when throwing the last fireball, Mario was standing a bit away from Boom Boom, so the fireball traveled for longer before hitting him. This is a very minor time loss though. Overall, the Boom Boom fights in this run went very well.
Looks like I'm pretty par with it.
Okay, this part needs a deep dive. There are three major things happening here: the wall jump, the thwomp kill, and the wall clip. Let's start with the wall jump. When Mario hits the side of any block, he moves partly inside the block and gets pushed out on the next frame. So after running into a wall, he can be found inside of the wall for a short time. Everything from ground to pipes to walls is broken up into individual blocks. This piece of the wall is in no way different to any ground block Mario can stand on. If on the first frame Mario is found inside of a wall, he's on top of a block that makes up that wall, he can stand on it for that one frame, so he can also jump from this position. Note that as opposed to Super Mario Bros., Mario doesn't need to be exactly on the top pixel of the block. Of the 16 pixels that make up each block, a wall jump is possible for 6 of them. But this is not as simple as a frame-perfect jump. To be able to stand on a block, Mario needs to be at least this far in, 3 pixels inside of the wall. Mario's position is calculated with more precision than the visual resolution of the screen. The smallest unit of distance the game commonly uses is 1/16th of a pixel, which is called a subpixel. Consequently, Mario's speed is calculated in subpixels per frame, so a speed of 16 is exactly 1 pixel per frame, and Mario's top speed without a full P-meter is 40 or 2.5 pixels per frame. At that speed, he will alternate between moving 2 pixels and 3 pixels on every frame. This means that assuming Mario is coming into the wall pixel perfectly at full speed, there's only a 50-50 chance that he will move 3 pixels into the wall. If his subpixel position is in the lower half, he will move by 2 pixels instead, which is not enough to stand inside of the wall. From any random starting position, only 8 out of 40 subpixels allow Mario to wall jump. So by running at full speed into a wall and jumping at a random part of it, the chance of having the opportunity to perform a 1-frame wall jump is only 7%. Here, Mitch was possibly not moving at full speed. We can't measure exactly how much speed he had, but it seems to be somewhere between 36 and 40. Every unit of speed below 40 makes the wall jump increasingly unlikely, with the absolute minimum speed being 33, just 1 subpixel above 2 pixels per frame. Mario's subpixel position is entirely out of Mitch's control, as it's never set to a fixed value at any point other than the very start of the run. On top of that, Mitch needs to time his jump frame perfectly while Mario is stumbling in the air because of the star power, making it very hard to see where he is exactly relative to the wall. All of this makes the wall jump the single hardest trick in this run by a long shot. It's particularly inconvenient that it's right at the very end of the run after 4 auto-scrollers and a 1 in 8 chance. The next part is this thwomp kill. Mitch needs to keep his Fire Flower for the Bowser fight, so that's why he uses the star that he got in this level to get through the Thwomp. The star expiring seems like a pretty close call, but just how close is it? Well, we can use Mario's flashing as a reference. It turns out that the last frame of invincibility is exactly 2 frames before Mario returns to his normal color, which happens to be this frame. That's right, this Thwomp kill was frame perfect. 1 frame later and the star would have had expired. The wall clip is a bit different. By duck jumping into this pixel and releasing down, Mario stands on the block and uncrouches. This puts his upper half fully inside of the ceiling. In this case, instead of ejecting Mario to the left, the game slowly pulls Mario to the right until he's out on the other side. The easiest and most famous way to do this is using this 1-up block, as simply jumping onto the block and uncrouching will get Mario to the other side of the wall. Mario is moving at the same speed, so the odds of Mario ending up 3 pixels inside the wall are again about 1 in 5. It would seem that the wall jump from just a few seconds earlier would give some insight on the subpixel value of Mario's position, but this value is so finicky that tiny factors such as the exact subpixel when hitting the wall jump, the slightly irregular acceleration mechanics, and having to duck before the jump are more than enough to throw any guess out of the window. As a result, the subpixel position is, again, effectively random. Bowser's Castle has a pretty complex layout. There are 2 different paths and 2 different arenas. This door leads to this section of the subworld and this arena, and that door leads to that section in the second arena. However, because there's only one subworld, these are all connected. By taking this door and going through the wall, Mario ends up where this door normally takes him. This cuts most of the level, but prevents Mario from going through this section with the speed. Overall, it saves about 5 seconds. Here, Mario ducks to fit under the ceiling without hitting it. However, if he was moving at full speed, he would have still hit it. So, Mitch intentionally presses down earlier and slides on this statue. While sliding, Mario gradually loses speed, and this tiny slowdown is just enough to barely miss the corner. The usual way to defeat Bowser is to force him to destroy the floor until he falls down, but using fireballs is about 25 seconds faster. Bowser takes 35 fireballs to kill. Mitch positions himself perfectly so that Bowser would jump right next to him, allowing him to fire the last few fireballs faster.
What? What?
And just like that, Super Mario Bros. 3 was beaten in 10 minutes and 44 seconds. The timing ends on entering the door, specifically on this frame. Mitch stopped his timer at 10:44:47, but upon retiming the run, it was found to be a 10:44.416.
Yeah.
With this run, he beat the previous world record set by Kirua in 2017 by just under 1 second.
Sorry about that scream.
So, what else can be done to improve the record? Well, although Mitch got very fortunate patterns, there's always room for faster Hammer Bros and a better Sun pattern. Together, these could save a bit over a second. Also, although his map movement was astoundingly accurate, Mitch did slowly lose frames over the course of the run. Compared to frame-perfect gameplay, he lost a total of 25 frames in the 38 overworld moves and 31 frames entering the 16 stages of the run. This sums up to 56 frames, not even a second off absolute perfection. Keep in mind that being early, even by a single frame, is a large time loss, yet Mitch somehow did most of the actions on the map within 1 frame of perfect. Other than that, there are a few little things here and there that add up, like the Boom Boom fights, the World 1 levels, and 8-1 for instance. There's almost always frames to squeeze out of these sections, but it's hard to estimate exactly how many. There is some time left to save by adding more tricks to the run. The 1-2 sliding strategy is too precise to pull off in real-time runs. The issue with it is twofold. First, actually reaching the maximum sliding speed is nearly impossible without either getting hit by the Goomba or hitting this wall. Second, Mario slows down when he touches the ground, requiring frame-perfect jumps to preserve his speed. A suboptimal speed carries through the entire stage, so these compounding speed losses make this trick not only extremely hard to pull off in the first place, but also even harder to save any time with it. The Tank and Navy auto-scrollers can be sped up by up to 44 frames using this block clip. Although very hard, it has been done in real time before, and it is considered a somewhat viable option to save time on the record. considering that getting out of the block 1 frame late is instant death, it's fair to assume that runners would err on the safe side and jump a bit early, saving about 30 to 40 frames per clip at most, or a bit over a second if going for both. The first one is much harder to pull off though, due to this precise jump on the cannonball to reach the final tank. In Bowser's Castle, there is potential for a strategy to build up P-speed here that would involve turning back between the P-meter checks, but without precise knowledge of which frame the P-meter is checking on, this would be a ridiculously risky endeavor. Even with that knowledge, it would still be incredibly hard to slow down just the right amount to always be at full speed every 8 frames, while saving enough distance to fill up the P-meter before leaving the ground. It is a possible area of development, but it looks unlikely as of now. Finally, the Holy Grail. In rare instances, Bowser can have this much lower death animation and fall down faster. Compare this with the regular animation that Mitch got in his run. Surely this would save a lot of time, right? Well, it turns out it only saves 1 second. It also requires hitting the final fireball on Bowser frame perfectly at the same time he starts his animation to jump. It also needs to be a low jump, because if he does a high jump instead, this happens. In that case, the fanfare is delayed by almost 1.5 minutes. Needless to say, performing a frame-perfect kill on a random Bowser pattern so you can risk the entire run on a coin flip to save 1 second is the last thing anyone wants to do to beat this record. All things considered, we can see that Super Mario Bros. 3 has not quite reached its limit just yet, but it's incredibly close. The tool-assisted speedrun by Tompa, Maru, and Lord Tom clocks in at 10:23, but almost nothing in this run can ever be pulled off by a human. If someone pulled off a run with perfect luck, perfect map movement, both auto-scroller clips, and a fast Bowser death, it would just be barely enough to break the 1040 barrier. It's unclear whether or not this will ever happen. As of right now, nobody is actively trying to achieve such a feat. I personally think a 1039 is simply too hard to be done, but I'd sure love to be proven wrong.